Welcome to the Boswell Shorewood Public Library Shorewood Historical Society virtual event program with Nicholas D. Hayes. He is the author of Frank Lloyd Wright's Forgotten House, How an Omission Transformed the Architect's Legacy. We're so excited that this wonderful book from University of Wisconsin Press features a house in Shorewood, which is why we have dual sponsorships. And I would love to introduce one of our two favorite partners, Haley Johnson, a librarian with the Shorewood Public Library. And I just want to mention before I introduce her that tonight's event has our author in conversation with a debut conversation partner, but already one of our favorites, the Frank Lloyd Wright expert, Catherine Boldt. So take it away, Haley. Thank you so much for it.
Yeah. Hi, and my name is Haley Johnson. I'm the Community and Adult Services Librarian at the Shorewood Public Library. I'm pleased to be here tonight with you all. I've had the pleasure of hearing Nick talk in the past and also working with his wife, Angela, on our all school district art show, which we weren't able to hold this year, but we're looking forward to hosting again in 2022. So with that, I'll pass it over to our other co-sponsor, Karin de Hartog from the Shorewood Historical Society. So.
Thank you, Haley, and good evening and welcome to all of you on behalf of the Shorewood Historical Society. So Haley mentioned my name is Karin de Hartog and I am the Education Chair for the Society. Somewhere around 2015, it came to our attention at the Society that there was a Frank Lloyd Wright designed American systems built house in Shorewood on Newton Avenue. The fact that we were not aware of this house and that its history had in fact been lost is the subject of the book that you are going to hear about tonight. Nick Hayes and his wife Angela purchased the small house in 2016 and began restoring the home and researching its history. We were pleased to give him some research assistance and particularly happy to introduce him to one of our favorite people and favorite members, Dorothy Hoffman, a lifelong Shorewood resident who knew the first family to live in the little house. During the day, Nick leads the technology and science teams at a Milwaukee-based water technology business, but he and his wife Angela, who is an art teacher at Atwater School, have found the time to complete period-appropriate renovations, remove improper treatments, and restore original finishes. They have opened the home to the 2017 Write and Like tour and to Shorewood grade school students as part of their art curriculum. Thankfully, for us, Nick has also found time to record the story of this house in a very informative and enjoyable book, Frank Lloyd Wright's Forgotten House. Nick is a very adept speaker and writer, and the story that he is telling ultimately is about time and place and people with the little house on Newton Avenue at its center. Go ahead, Nick.
Wow, thanks, Karen. I don't know if I can live up to that. I want to hand it over to Catherine Boldt. I need to say that Catherine and I met for the first time a couple of days ago while walking through the Elizabeth Murphy House, which is the name of this home. And so Catherine is going to engage us in a conversation. We've shared some notes on how we do it. Let me first of all introduce Catherine and then ask her to kick this off with the first few ideas under discussion.
Well, hello, everyone. Good evening. And hi, Nick. So nice to see you. Again, I will just say that I would not be a true Frank Lloyd Wright nerd if I didn't take the opportunity to barge into a Frank Lloyd Wright house. If I was going to be talking with the owner on the internet, then yes, I invited myself over so that I could see the house. Of course, to really help me prepare for this interview. But it was a great pleasure. And I hope I'm not wrong in saying, but it was like Nick and I had spoken many times before. We got along really well because we both were completely nerding out over all the details and how we could exchange information about his house. So I had my cheeks were sore from smiling. It was such a great time. But so we should talk about one, I think, what made you interested in buying the house that you have at this time? What brought that about?
It's a great question to begin with, Catherine. We had no idea what we were doing. We didn't know that we were destined to live in a piece of history. We only knew that we wanted to downsize. We lived about 8 blocks north of here in Shorewood, Wisconsin. We moved here originally in 1994-ish for the schools, like most people do here. We had our first daughter had just been born, and these schools are extraordinary. And so we bought the biggest house we could possibly afford in 1994 and packed it full of stuff. And then when our daughters were off to college, we realized that we were living in too much space and taking care of too many things. And so we began our quest to downsize. I guess that quest started in maybe 2014 and nothing really came up. And then this house was discovered and it was still on the market in 2016. And we decided to take a look and did. Within the first 5 or 6 minutes of stepping into the space, we knew we had to live here. And within about 5 or 6 days, we had an accepted offer. And about 6 weeks later, on December 23rd, let me say that again, 6 weeks later, on December 24th, Christmas Eve, we rolled most of our things down the street, Maryland Avenue, 8 blocks to move them into this house, having gotten rid of about half of our possessions in order to fit into this tiny little space. And then we landed on what really is the mystery of the house, and that is, how is it that you can forget a house to begin with that was designed, that has the pedigree of the master? And maybe more importantly than that, how is it that you can forget a Frank Lloyd Wright house positioned within about 250 feet of 3 homes by his assistant, Russell Barr Williamson, designed within the next few years after this home's construction? How does that happen? And so it was that question that had us wanting to move forward and uncover the mystery and then write the book.
What made you have the instinct that you knew right away from walking in that you wanted to live there?
Oh my gosh. We will do about a 6-minute fly-through tour shortly so everyone else can see this idea. One of the things that's very clear from the minute that you are that you're entering the space is that everything about your visit has been planned or is going to be planned. Your experience is first to try to find the door, and once you find it, then it's to try to wedge yourself through the tight space, and then it's to try to piece together the history of wall surfaces that make no sense. And then it's to try to wedge yourself through another tight corner to find your way into the living space, which opens up dramatically like a concert hall almost. And that was none of that was accidental. It was those elements and those experiences were placed there in that order by the architect because he believed that folks had to have significant experiences inside their spaces that would help them to make friends and treat people well and find ways to cooperate and find ways not to clutter their lives. It was obvious from the beginning this was planned.
Well, the house was intended for all of those things and also to be an affordable option. This is one of Wright's most modest style homes. And many people have asked me over the years if I would like to live in a Frank Lloyd Wright home. And I have always responded no, because I am a creative person and I want to put my mark on things, just as Frank Lloyd Wright wanted to put his mark on everything. But you have been very respectful to the home. You have done things very subtly and tastefully, and have added furnishings and decorations that do not shout too loudly to overtake the home. And one of the things I said to you when we visited together was that I thought your home was what I would call attainable beauty, in that you can visit many Wright homes like Falling Water or Mrs. Dana's house in Springfield, or even the Boak House in the Downer area, that are extremely beautiful, extremely ornate. But your house is beautiful because of its simplicity. What were Wright's ideas or solutions to make your house livable and simple?
So we have to say two things about this. The first is that Wright was on a lifelong quest to try to make artistic spaces for all of the people. He said that to design a small house was amongst his lifelong challenges and the most difficult things that he tried to do. A small, affordable house. He tried twice. He did it. He worked on this problem twice. And the first time he worked on it was for about the turn of the 20th century, excuse me, about midpoint of the aughts in the 1900s. He was already working on modest homes, single and two-story homes that could be placed in tracts and subdivisions. And he called these the Americans, and then he called them the ready cuts, and then eventually the name American System Built Homes was conceived. And officially the program only really lasted from about 1919 to about 1917. And for all practical purposes, it was a bust. It really didn't work at all. It failed for many reasons we'll talk about as we move through this discussion today. But what is clear is, while it was a bust, he took many lessons from it, and he applied those lessons to his next attempt to build modest homes for the working class. And those were his Usonian homes, beginning in about 1936 and continuing until after his death. Now, some of the Usonians are huge, opulent themselves, large spaces, running over budgets, and that couldn't be cared for by the working class. But many of them were quite similar to this idea. Just 1,000 square feet, a couple of bedrooms, a single bath, not much room for storage, loads and loads of light coming in from all the angles. So his idea of attempting to build homes for the working class needs to be thought of as a lifelong goal. Now, the second thing that needs to be said about it is that while he was working on this, he was traveling back and forth to Japan. His major commission at the time was the Imperial Hotel. He'd been there twice by the time this house was built. During his visits, he was amazed at the sensitivity of the Japanese space. A sparse, open, clean room with horizontal lines emphasizing, the idea that you might turn left or right to see friends as opposed to look up or down for other reasons. He was of the feeling that the Japanese idea could be brought to an American lifestyle, but only if Americans were willing to live a sparser, cleaner, downsized experience. And so going back to your original question about how we landed here, when we were downsizing, we walked into the space that was perfectly proportioned to do exactly that, to house not much, not many things, only the important ones. You know, there's only one shelf in the entire house, and it has 60 books and a few bowls of trinkets and a picture, and that's it. So I think I've answered your question on a couple of different dimensions. Where else do you want to go?
Well, that takes me to something that I always talk about Wright, is that he always emphasized living in a human scale. And I think that's what your house is. It is a house with a human, really livable scale. To me, that would fit in really well with Wright's ideas about Broadacre City, that it was a small, manageable city, and your house is a small, manageable house. You've talked about the fact that there are other homes by his acolytes that are in your neighborhood. Can you tell us what other things that were going on at the time, and what was happening in Wright's personal life that made him have a choice to end this project?
You bet.
So took his attention away from this project.
You bet. I'm glad you brought up Broadacre City, but I just want to sidebar for a second and say that we didn't talk about this during your visit, but I was thinking today in preparation for this that Wright was never thinking about just the house. He was also thinking about everything around the house. He was thinking about the houses next door and the houses across the street and the way the house was oriented to the street and on its land and in its yard. So I think that one of the things that is often forgotten about the American system-built homes, which often just appeared one at a time on a block because it was an early idea at the time subdivisions were forming. He really wanted to see, he wanted to inform the subdivision with these designs. And he wanted to position many people in small spaces on small blocks to communicate with each other as neighbors. So I just wanted to put it out there that, you know, then of course he moved into actual subdivisions, but for right now we have one of these houses and then another house completely unlike it next door. But to think about subdivision development and to try to make these homes available to all of America, he was trying to democratize art at the time. And he wanted to see these homes everywhere. He lined himself up with a partner developer whose name is Arthur L. Richards, who was the son of a successful Milwaukeean. Richard Street here in Milwaukee is named after Arthur's dad, Charles. It's only about 10 blocks from here. Richards was a skilled real estate man. He would create companies to buy and create companies to sell and create companies to build homes. And what he promised to do for Wright is take Wright's designs and set up a supply chain to deliver all of the materials to the construction site, to the contractor, to build these homes to their drawings without wasting a scrap of wood or a bucket of plaster. It was a perfect supply chain scheme. Wright's designs compared with factory automation, if you will, if you can imagine that 100 years ago. But also
so that just brings us to the idea of what an American system-built house is. You just described it. It's a house that has uses its materials in the best way, and it is, as we talked about, it is not a prefab house, but it's a house that comes with clear instructions on how to construct it. Things aren't cut, but to the exact specifications, but all the materials are there together.
Correct. And those instructions were very important to the building of a house. And so Wright also needed the help of a draftsperson to produce the massive number of drawings that would be required to build these houses. And it turns out that draftsperson was the the now well-known Milwaukee architect, Russell Williamson, or Russell Barr Williamson, he would later become. Russell Williamson was given the job by Wright, well in Wright's employ, starting in 1914, of really filling in the holes of the system. Wright conceived of the idea. He developed the frameworks for these houses, all the dimensions of them, all of the look and feel, the roof lines, the angles, the proportions, even the built-in furniture that would exist. But Russell Barr Williamson was given the task of drafting all of the instructions and the drawings that would be handed to contractors. Now, there's an interesting thing that needs to be said about that. Russell Barr Williamson, at the end of the American System Built program, was no longer employed by Wright. And remember what we said at the very beginning. There was a massive drama in Shorewood because within 2 or 3 years, there were 3 Russell Barr Williamson houses within 250 feet of this one. And within 5 years, there were 17 of them in the neighborhood of Shorewood. There was only one Wright home. So when we met Dorothy Hoffman, the wonderful woman now passed who helped us with the memories of Virginia Teddy Kibbe, her classmate, who was among the first children to be raised in this house, what we learned is that Teddy was terribly embarrassed to be living in a Wright-designed home when all of her friends, living in 17 different properties, some of them duplexes, and her classmates, lived in the famous architect Russell Barr Williamson's homes. And that drama played out in Shorewood for decades, to the point that the Kibbes themselves were embarrassed enough to start to cover up their Wright features on their home. And that explains one of the ways that the house was forgotten.
There you go. That is well, the title of your book is The Forgotten House, and how do you forget something as significant as a Frank Lloyd Wright house? Are there other ways that this house became forgotten?
Well, I deliberately used the word omission in the draft. The very first draft sent to UW Press, the actual title was The Omission. And Haley, when we got together and had that wonderful talk, also Karen, with Karen's help in sponsoring people to come to the library pre-COVID, the book's original title was The Omission, and that's all it said. But the press took hold of it. They had a great idea. They gave it the subtitle, How an Omission Transformed the Architect's Legacy. And I think one of the things that needs to be said is that it's easy to conclude that just one house was omitted from Wright's biography. But the truth is, when the American System Built program came to an end, which was a tumultuous end, Wright was so determined to erase it, to omit it from history, that he left it out of his autobiography. He goes from the Midway Gardens, a massive development in Chicago while he was working out of Chicago studios, directly to the Imperial Hotel, stopping off for work he did at Taliesin, but does not talk of the American System Built homes ever again after the program came to an end. So the omission, in addition to the Kibbes wanting to forget their own home, was a large one. It was a rewriting of history. I think Daniel talks about this in his own review of the book, on the part of Wright and many others, to try to cover up for the failure.
And can we give a little bit of context about what was happening in Wright's life as well that added to the term that you used, failure of this program?
Sure. First, let me begin by saying that there's actually a book about the period 1910 to 1920 called The Dark Years. The title itself speaks to the problem of the dark years. There was a period in Wright's life that was just loaded with tumult and trouble. He had left his first wife and his young children in Chicago towards the 1908, 1909 period, begun to travel internationally with his mistress. And the press picked it up and thought it was an awful thing to do. And so his reputation began to immediately suffer. He had built and then lost Taliesin to a fire a couple of years before this house, and lost his mistress in that fire. So he emotionally was distraught. His practice was suffering because of his reputation, and so he was forced to take projects internationally that took him away from family and his own loves, and he was borrowing money to keep Taliesin in place. It was a very difficult time in his life, and I think the best way to read, I think one of the ways to read the American System Built program inside of this is that he was willing to experiment with this idea of homes for the masses during this dark time as a means of learning more about how to do this. And I think he came in hoping it would be a success, of course, everyone would. But when it became clear to him that he and his partner and the young Williamson, stuck in between Wright and his partner, saw solutions of affordable housing in different ways, Wright had to say, I'm not going to do this right now. I don't have the time and energy to take this one on. I can't correct from Japan what I see as problems with direction, and so I'm not going to do it. I'm going to shut it down and not talk about it again. We'll deal with this problem later. And indeed, we know what he did in 1936. He began this Usonian program. So it took about 18 more years before he would restart that process. And by then, he had really reemerged. He'd rebuilt his reputation. He had found his new way. He was past the ideas of moving in trends, and now on the idea of moving on his own ideas alone.
Well, one of the things that we had talked about was, yes, the program came to an end, but can you imagine if it didn't? Can you imagine the impact that this system-built house, the house for the masses, would have had on North America? How it would change everybody's house today? How the idea of this simple beauty, this livable beauty, this attainable lifestyle, simple lifestyle, it would have really changed homes for the better throughout North America. And as we discussed before, for me, the system-built house is to the Victorian house what the Usonian house is to the modern house. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your home.
Kate, why don't we take this as a chance?
Oh, go ahead.
Why don't we take this as an opportunity to do our tour? Doesn't it make sense that we walk people through the home at this moment? Okay, let's do that. I'm gonna share the screen and bear with us as we deal with these technologies. But here's what we have for you. We've done a fly-through tour. It's a single camera shot through the whole house. It only takes 6 minutes to see nearly every detail. And what we'll do is pause a few times for a couple of little conversations. Here we go. We are on Newton Avenue, facing eastbound on a morning earlier last week, and we're going to begin this tour. Newton is a quiet street. I will stop you right there and point out that on your left, the low-slung roof that looks like it may be a piece of the Imperial Hotel is in fact a Russell Barr Williamson designed home called the Eagers Bungalow. It's a jewel. It's a wonderful house on our block. But we'll continue through our tour of the Lloyd Wright house, which is across the street from the Eagers Bungalow. And here we go. The house is a 960 square foot L-shaped box. You're looking at the kind of the foot of the L, if you will. And what we need to do at the very beginning is figure out where the door is. You can clearly see from the front of the house that there is no door on the front of the house. There's a bank of eight windows in what looks like the living space and 3 others in what used to be a porch, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes. And you'll also notice that the house is covered in cedar shake siding. Remember that the Kibbeys had begun to cover the house up early in its life. The cedar shake siding was on within 15 years. Underneath it is a stucco material called pebble dash that you will witness yourselves in just a minute. But we found the door. This is the first entry into the house. It's 5 steps up. Only one person can find their way in. It's a strange space. Are we sure we want to actually make this commitment and join these people in this house? And of course, we're going to do it. So we'll enter the house. And the very first thing we're drawn to do is turn to the right. The reason is what's revealed to us is the gardens from an angle that we've never seen before. Below this shot is, as Kate knows, a Japanese maple, but we're looking into the backyard with a view of the side of the home, but also a sense for being drawn into the garden from this angle by the house itself. We're being asked to move out. It's just a wonderful way of experiencing the beginning of a house. And so now what we'll do is we'll actually focus on the house. We will move ourselves to the left and realize that we actually have not yet entered the home. Where we are in the Elizabeth Murphy house is in a since enclosed open to the air porch that was built for the purposes of sleeping outside in the summer in the open air. So everywhere that you see glass now didn't have glass in it when the home was originally built. But almost immediately glass was placed in these windows in order to make more space. This room accounts for 320 square feet, which is about 1/3 of the entire square footage of the interior of the space. So they wanted to recapture it right away, but that explains the exterior surface, which is the stucco that would have been on the entire exterior of the house before and is now covered up by cedar shake. This is called pebble dash. It was quite experimental. I'm not sure actually that Wright prescribed pebble dash. I think Arthur Richards may have prescribed the pebble dash in the American system-built homes, and that Wright let it go as a decision that he wasn't willing to argue against. The pebble dash didn't last. There's only one home left in the entire portfolio of about 12 American system-built homes that still has it on the exterior. We're lucky to have it on the interior because it's protected by the heat. And so it doesn't break down, and that's why it's here after 103 years. The floors in this room are made from cypress because this would have been an outdoor room and painted in the original color green. And now you can recognize that we're looking at the front windows of the house, not some space between a room and a room, but those were the home's front windows. That was the home's front light. And lo and behold, there's a closed door that we'll pass through that was the original home, or I'm sorry, the original front door of the home. Sorry, we'll pass you through a drawing that we have on the wall. Here's the original front door, and now we're finally entering the space. So we'll do that first through a narrow passageway. Wright's lesson of compress, then release is very clear here. You walk down this passageway by yourself, wondering what's on the other side, and find yourself in a location where you must make a decision. Will you turn left, where the ceilings are tall, the acoustics are loud, people are talking and sharing a refreshment, or will you turn right to the intimate part of the house, which we'll show you in a minute? That view was back through your compress then release. We'll walk through the main part of the house and our south-facing windows, which light the interior space. You'll see the other side of the L. We'll come back to that momentarily. A hearth at the very heart of the house where the family will congregate at night. And now you can see the low ceiling. that calls you to the intimate parts of the house, which are the 2 bedrooms and bath on the other side. So that place of greeting in the middle of the home is quite important because it drives you to make a decision about whether you'll be social or not. We're now in what's called the breakfast nook. These are original Wright designed built-in cabinets. The home was completely finished in birch. The American system-built homes had built-ins designed by Wright in various places, and all of them are here in the Elizabeth Murphy house. And in fact, the finish that you see is made from 2 coats of amber shellac, and it was originally applied by the builder Herman Krause 103 years ago, if you can imagine. One of the reasons we love the house so much is that not a single stitch of trim had been painted in its entire existence. And now we've turned to the kitchen. I'm going to stop here and point out that this is a pass-through kitchen. Imagine how 1950s this seems now, right? The table is on your left and just behind you, and the folks who are preparing your food are just on the other side of this door and able to monitor whether or not you need to have your plate refilled. In the kitchen, the upper cabinets are original. The lowers are not. They were replaced in the 70s, although they are in the same U-shaped pattern that Wright prescribed. And I want to point out that the cabinets that you see through that door down the hall, that was the original ice box. So 1917, ice was cut on the Milwaukee River and brought to homes from ice storage and placed into ice boxes instead of refrigeration. So on the left of that ice box, as you will see, there's a door that through which the icemen come in. And then finally, where we have under-counter refrigerators is where the stove was originally placed. So that now is also a workspace, just like it would have been before, although the appliances have been moved around. These cabinets are the original 103-year-old finish and were constructed to the drawings by Herman Krause. You'll notice that the prairie band line, that upper horizontal trim passes through the whole house. And here is the large back door. It's oversized so that coal can go down the steps for heat and ice can come up the steps for the ice box. We've now entered the very low ceiling, only 6.5 feet tall, intimate part of the house. This is where the acoustics are quieter, where simply by walking through this hall, you know it's time to, well, prepare for bed, frankly, because the bedrooms are where you'll enter next. This is a master bedroom. It's only 10 by 12 feet, so it fits a full-size bed and a dresser, and that's about it. And we're gonna take you through a quick outdoor tour of the backyard by secretly going through the window. You couldn't actually do this, but I could do it with my handheld camera. And I wanted you simply to understand how connected to the gardens this place is. The house is, it's those back windows feel like a large screen television of squirrels and trees. It's just a wonderful way of waking up in the morning. Thought you'd enjoy that. We'll head back into the house and take you on the last minute of this tour. So we'll walk through the 10 by 11 foot second bedroom. This is where the Kibbe daughters grew up. They were here for 20 years. They shared this bedroom with their grandmother, who had dementia at the time. Can you imagine living in a 960 square foot home with 5 adults in that way? And then finally, I'm going to stop you here and point out that this bath, which was a mess when we moved in, frankly, was probably never completed to specification originally, and then had just been modernized over time, kind of layer upon layer. We took it down to the studs, put the original clawfoot tub in it, a Kohler design that was found in the Burnham Block American System Built homes as a clue for us, and added the trim that is appropriate and downsized the fixtures so that it would feel more Wrightian. It's 6 by 6.5 square feet. So it's a very tiny space, not a single shelf for a towel or extra bars of soap. What you have to do is carry your things into this bathroom and then carry them out to keep it clean. It is a way of just-in-time living that we found to be simple and elegant and clean And well, we appreciate it. There's our bookshelf. And the last thing I want to do is tell you the story of the fireplace. And so I'll pause here. This house was begun in April of 1917. Wright canceled the American System Built program in July of 1917. It took another 25 months or so to finish this house for lack of supervision and shortages of materials. And so the poor contractor, Herman Krause, had no support from Wright's studio or anyone else, frankly, to try to build this house. So he made many mistakes. One of our favorites is the mistake in the fireplace. Wright had said that it's important to inset the grout on the horizontal line, while pulling the grout to the brick surface on the vertical lines, thus creating a horizontal effect left to right. I think maybe to remind you to look at your friends. But the bricklayer in this case didn't read that specification appropriately, and he made a mistake at the very beginning. He started on the columns, and when he finally got to the top of the firebox, he laid a course without putting any grout in between the verticals. And when he did that, he changed the proportions of the bricks, causing himself to have to cut bricks for the remaining courses. But if you follow the vertical line up on the right or left-hand side, you'll see that it breaks right here, right at the top of the firebox. And what that means is that the mason technically adhered to Wright's spec, but two different ways during one project, which of course Wright would have absolutely hated. He would have looked at this and said, "You've made a terrible mistake. You must tear the whole house down." And we love this. We love this problem because it's a reminder of what happens to someone who's on the back end of a failed program. And that is the end of our tour. Where would you like to take it, Kate?
Oh, that was an excellent tour. I'm sure everyone that is watching really enjoyed that, because I had such a great time on my tour. There's been a couple of questions that have come up. One can be answered by the fact that we had a look at your enlarged or your oversized back door. Somebody asked about, how do you get furniture into your house? That's one of the first things I said when I walked in. How do you get furniture in there? So it's through that oversized back door. And then another person talked about, in a comment, talked about how there's this movement now for the smaller sized home. And there was a book called that started the small house movement. And there was another author that created a book all about the fact that Wright was really into creating the smaller sized home. And that book is called The Right Sized Home. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I said to you about your home is that I believe that you need neither more nor less of a home to live a good life. And you can live a good life in that house.
Mm-hmm. You bet.
So are we missing any details that you wanted to talk about? We talked about sort of the scandal that led. Do we want to talk about the fallout of the Wright? Oh, we kind of covered that, the Wright, Richardson, Williams fallout. Should we open things up to a couple of questions?
Sure, I think that's a good idea. I guess I would like to comment on one last thing. The American System Built program is the least of the documented Wrightian experiences. Some historians call it one of his most significant endeavors. More drawings created for this program. I think there are 992 at the Avery Library in New York. More drawings created for this program than any other project by itself. And the problem is, because of the cover up at the end, it's been very difficult to understand exactly why it came to an end. So this book is about why it came to an end. It really captures that story. Omission is key to the ingredients. But I want to say that when the historians, lacking Wright's own writing about it, historians have had to speculate about why it came to an end. And one of the main reasons folks will cite is that that World War I came on just as the program was trying to get traction. Another one is that supplies were hard to get because of World War I. I don't think that's right. I think that the program came to an end very deliberately at Wright's insistence. His own letters say this. He didn't want it talked about. Had this just been a matter of convenience because the market was down, then what he would have done is put aside his drawings and start again as soon as the war was over and the supply chains were recovered. But in fact, what really happened is he put the drawings aside and he walked away from the prairie style altogether. His life choices were dramatic following this event. So I like to think of the war really as cover for him in getting out of this and changing his mind to try other things, as opposed to the reason that it came to an end. And I think that that's a better reading of history. And so with that, why don't we take some questions?
Okay, I really like that reading. That rings true to me. Absolutely. Okay. We have a question from a person that's been really great to respond, Sandra Wicker, and she said, well, I'm sorry, I lost her question. Okay. So Milwaukee is fortunate to have the Burnham Block in the American Systems built homes. And yes, it is available for touring. That is a house that is, again, no more, no less than you need to have a good life. And certainly I encourage everybody to go visit the Systems built house. I discourage people though, however, to go and knock on Nick's house next door. I particularly want that. And none of the other Frank Lloyd Wright owned homes, they want that either, by the way, just in case you were wondering out there.
Let me shout out really quickly to Wright in Milwaukee, the organization that has been snatching up the tract of homes on the Burnham Block. There's 6 there, 4 duplexes and 2 single family homes. And I think Wright in Milwaukee has most of them now in some stage of protection. They're doing a beautiful job of raising money to pick up the homes when they can. And as soon as they get them, they start renovations. First, they secure the homes so that they won't be lost to age. And then they're moving them into a state where they can be toured. The B1 is the one you speak of. It's a beautiful, fully renovated single family home. A duplex, I believe, is the interior is being completed as we speak and will be open for tours. So it's a wonderful thing to see. You can see the freeway signs that point you there. I do want to say that the way to put this in history is that the Burnham Block was constructed by Wright Richards with Williamson's help prior to the contract being signed, where the men agreed to try to take this national. The best way to think about it is that the Burnham Block homes are prototypes to the American System built homes. And then about, I don't know, maybe 20 more homes were built in places as far as Gary and Iowa and Chicago, of course, and here in Milwaukee. And the commercial American System built homes and the Burnham Block homes actually have many differences in terms of characteristics. The Burnham Block homes try ideas that don't make it into the commercial homes, and the commercial homes have ideas that weren't in the Burnham Block homes for a variety of reasons. And it's wonderful to both study the homes and study the drawings to see that evolution, because it only took about a year, which is quite stunning.
One person asked about gutters.
Yeah.
Which we talked about that Frank Lloyd Wright and I refer to gutters as eaves troughs. So they want to know about your eaves troughs on your home.
Yep. So it is a myth that Frank Lloyd Wright didn't like. It is not a myth that he didn't like gutters. It is a myth that he didn't use gutters. He used gutters where he needed gutters. In fact, it should be said that his own home, his own first home in Oak Park, has gutters, almost exactly like the gutters that we have on our American System Built Home Model A203. You could buy this model in 3 roof forms: a flat roof, a gabled roof, and a hip roof. This is the hip roof design. Of course, the flat roof would have a roof that angled to the end to a drain in the center and would head out, and the rainwater would head out to the street, and you'd never know it. But the gabled roof and the hip roof designs both needed gutters, and so Frank Lloyd Wright specifically said, you will put 6-inch half round. I'm going to say that a little differently. He said, you will put half round iron gutters and circular downspouts in the locations as specified by the drawings on homes that had gabled and hip roof designs. And in fact, the gutters that are on this house are exactly the gutters that were installed originally by Harriman Krause. And they're the same gutters that exist that are the originals on one of the 2 single-family homes at the Burnham Block. They are half rounds, and they've been painted with oil paint as Wright recommended they be painted so that they don't rust. So it is a bit of a myth. Now, I'll say by the time he got to Usonian homes, the overhangs were much larger, and he was in a place where he was avoiding placing them at all. And so that would foster the myth that he hadn't used them during his lifetime.
Okay. I've seen them, people. I've seen the eaves trough. They are there. They are painted in that that oil paint. One thing that is remarkable about your home is that it has original lead glass design. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can. I think you can see it in my background in these windows that are original. All of the American System Built homes had a simpler abstract leaded glass design than is typically seen on some of Wright's more opulent homes. You know, specifically the Bach House or the Roby House or the Dana House in Springfield, which have these wonderful ornate and geometric polygon shaped organic motifs. The American System Built homes had, as far as you can tell from the drawings, not very many different window designs. Many of the models sported the same diamond pattern in the drawings, and that can be seen on homes that still have those original windows. This model A203 has its own unique motif, and I suggest that you visit the elizabethmurphyhouse.com to see see it up close. There are many pictures of it on our Instagram page. It's a beautiful motif. Angela, when she's bringing 4th grade Atwater kids through the house, always asks them what they see in the design, and they'll say a tulip or a rose or a tree. One kid said a man with a hat, which we found to be fun. But in a conversation recently with a leaded glass artisan, Matthew pointed out that these windows actually are a reflection of the home itself. The design of the front facade of the home can be seen in the windows themselves, which is something I think he did also in the Roby House.
Well, it is very simple and an elegant detail that adds that sort of, I'm going to say, Wrightian flair to your home. And I also am going to plug your newsletter, because you wrote a post about that in your last newsletter, and I have been receiving your newsletter right from the beginning. So if people are interested to know more about what you're doing, the updates about the type of updates about the changes and the events that are going on with your house, they should sign up for your newsletter. And how would they do that?
Well, I'm gonna tell you that it's really simple. Go to elizabethmurphy.com and there's a blog. Sign up like everybody else has. I want to answer a question that I noticed on the screen that will one day be answered on that newsletter. And the question is, can you tell us about the garage? So let me give me a minute while I talk about that. This house was originally built in 1917 on a piece of, it's 32 feet long or 32 feet wide. The piece of land is only 50 feet wide at that location. So when it was built without a garage because Arthur Tibby, who lived here originally, took the trolley to Milwaukee for his job. And it didn't have a location for a driveway to be added since the whole house occupied the front of the yard. So fast forward to the 1950s, 60s, 70s, when everybody bought cars and the trolleys were gone, it became time to think about, where to put a car here. And fortunately or unfortunately, the space under which I sit, which is the sleeping porch, which only had a crawl space, was excavated along with part of the front yard to create a driveway. And now we drive underneath this house to place into a garage that's underneath it. Now, of course, Wright would have hated that. It doesn't look correct from the front. So we've been asked if we could renovate anything, what would it be? And for me, frankly, it would be to fill in the garage and the driveway. That's the way the house was originally designed. But in order to do that, we wouldn't want to need to have a car. And so I like to think about this downsizing as a shrinking all material possessions, including the things we depend on, like automobiles. Wouldn't it be great if I could take the trolley to work like Mr. Tibby did back in 1919? It's only 4 miles. It could be right down the block. I would love to go back to that as part of our downsizing quest. So read about that on our blog. We hope to one day get there.
Well, trolleys are coming back in Milwaukee, that is for sure.
You betcha they are.
Yeah. About the lighting behind you, is the lighting original? Did you put that lighting in?
Of course, we put the lighting in. Think about the house as a 1917 home. The incandescent light bulb is still a clear glass, large filament bulb. Wright's own in Oak Park didn't have electricity at the very beginning. It was built in a suburb on the southwest side of Chicago, and he had to retrofit it with wiring. American system-built homes were all designed to have lights, to have electricity, but to do it fast and inexpensively, he placed, in this home, I think there would have been 10 pull string sconces in various locations on the walls, and that's it. Now, the light that you see behind my head, this bright one, is actually the front light, the outdoor light, and is original to the house. That would have been there to mark the front door, because you would have walked through this interior, this open sleeping porch in order to get to that front door. And that's how you knew that someone was home if that light were on. But the lights above in the ceiling are accent lights that we've placed there. And the reason we did is, my gosh, look at how beautiful these jeweled walls are. They just need to be lit up at night. So we do it.
Excellent. Can we talk about the sleeping porch for a minute? Because that's kind of, I think, significant to our time, in the fact that you had a sleeping porch for public health reasons.
You bet. You bet. Most of the American system-built designs had some form of sleeping porch. And what a sleeping porch was exactly that. You'd put a bed or a cot out on the porch, and it would be open to the air. So these windows on my left, those windows in front of me, and the ones that you see behind me would have all simply been an open to the outside space. There'd be no glass, no screens, no anything. Tuberculosis was running at the time, and it was thought that it was healthier to sleep in the outside when you could do it. And so that's why it was created. I also need to say that on the month that Herman Krause walked off the job site and left this house incomplete, which was August of 1918, Milwaukee was in its lockdown for the Spanish flu. So that was happening at the same time as well. Now that didn't play into Wright's design of sleeping porches, but it needs to, we all understand what that means now.
I just thought those two details were something significant that people can relate to more now than they would have, 2 years ago.
You bet.
So
my friend Mark Hertzberg who has just asked the question, would you ever take the sleeping porch back to its original? Mark, it's a great question, but you know what would happen? This pebble dash would begin to deteriorate in the cold, in the heat, and we can't let that happen. So we are in communications with the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy. This room is a museum piece, and the glass on the walls is what keeps it that way. It's exactly like putting your old Martin guitar or your old books in a humidor and keeping things right. That's what we're doing now. And so unfortunately, it can't go back to an open sleeping porch. Would we ever put pebble dash on the exterior? I go back and forth on that one. Yes, the house would look lovely with stucco, but holy cow, the kibbies put the cedar shake on the side within 15 years. And part of the home's history is the cover up.
more being obscured, things obscured. Interesting.
You bet.
I'll say hi to Hertzberg as well. Hello there.
Great.
Yes. Okay. So
I think we're probably close, huh?
we are getting
I can
close to
keep going.
time. We're just going to put it out there. Anybody else have a question that we haven't covered? Okay, Frank's right. Oh, there it is. There is the pertinent information you need to be able to keep in contact with Nick and to learn more about the future goings on about his house. Well,
Thanks, Kate.
I guess we should say thanks to everybody who tuned in. Daniel?
Hi, what a wonderful evening. Thank you both for a terrific, insightful, amazing tour and discussion of Frank Lloyd Wrightiana. Thank you everyone for coming, because we're grateful to both Catherine Boldt and Nicholas Hayes, but we're also grateful to all of you. We wouldn't have a virtual independent bookstore, a library, or historical society without your support. So have a great evening, everyone.
I just want to say, Daniel,
Yes.
I am so grateful that you and your fabulous store made it out the other side of this pandemic. I'm grateful that you exist and that you can continue to run programs like this.
Well, we are very grateful for your support as well, Catherine. You are always a joy. You are a joyful presence in the store. So, and Elizabeth Northby House is a joyful presence in Shorewood.
It was so much fun for me to visit, even if I had to invite myself over.
Ah!
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Great to see you. Good night.